Do you think Gerber Kawasaki? Oh,
I don't know. I don't know. We're gonna continue
okay.
from the green room here, talking about
We'll
Ross
continue.
Gerber. We're talking about Ross Gerber in the green room, and I don't know. Somebody's all excited over here. He thinks that
Well,
Ross Gerber.
cut it out, cut it out. Let's go right to the
We're not going to
chase,
talk
man.
about that now.
I don't
Oh,
think we want. I don't want to get in that much trouble.
okay. So, let's talk about robots then. Oh,
Yeah,
Ross would be a slick robot. Okay, let's go
yeah,
on,
yeah,
and we won't talk about Ross. Um, so we have a list of things to talk about this morning and very little time. I am
yeah.
pumped because I'm going to go watch some minor league ball with my 3-year-old grandson who thinks he will be the next major league star. He's going to be amazing. So
Awesome,
there you go. Yeah.
awesome, awesome. Is it the Mudheads?
Charlotte,
Oh,
something.
Charlotte. Okay. No, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
It's like there's not the classic name for a minor league team, the Mudheads.
I don't know this. I don't even know the ones in Riverside.
Casey. I mean, no, Casey at the bat. All that. Come on.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. All
All
right.
right. So, what's the news here? We got a lot of news to cover in a very
I'm
short time.
busy. Yeah, I mean, this is the type of thing we're kind of pressed on time because I forgot that you're East Coast
Oh, yeah.
and time zones and confusing AMs with PMs. Because when you say 8, I always think you mean 8 p.m. And I forgot, yes, you're in the same time zone as me right now.
For a minute.
And it's been a busy week. It's been coming as a blizzard. So
Yeah.
the last time we spoke, it was about Boston Dynamics.
Right.
And we had like really the hottest of hot takes because it was like fresh off the press and there wasn't a whole lot for us to be able to say about that. And so, I mean, maybe just kind of wrap it up because a lot of people have had a chance to kind of look at a few things. But before I jump into it, I think there's a few items that I need to clarify because I know you had Cern on last week.
I did.
Yeah, and I know, and I thought we'd finally buried the axe on some of this stuff, but
Well, he tried.
some things CERN just won't let some things go. So I mean, he keeps on talking about the fact that he says that how he comes prepared and I don't come prepared. So just a little bit of a warning here is I did come prepared this week.
Oh, you did?
The one thing I didn't come prepared enough to do is to figure out how to get my sharing to go first before I start to do this.
I see. So you have a
Yeah. So
PowerPoint.
here we go. Let's
Oh.
go ahead and let's get this thing here. And of course, he can make fun about boomers and Zoom. Boomers are not Zoomers. Okay, it's a big difference here. Oh, here we go. So let's go ahead and share that. There we go. All right. So, okay, this is a chart. Okay, this is what economists call like a line chart. You get like an x-axis and a y-axis, and you get this line that goes uppity up. Okay,
Yeah.
And they just love seeing that. Okay, so an example of a line chart that you'd want to lose is like if you've got gherkins and you've got fortnights, you can like look at a chart that tells you how many gherkins per fortnight you're able to produce. Okay,
That's right. Yes.
if you're looking at production. Okay, so just and then finally, you can look at the old guns and butter example here.
Right.
And this is known as the PPF. Now, this is not the wrap you put on your Cybertruck, right? That's the production possibilities frontier. So if you want to make nothing but guns, you can't make butter. And if you want to make something but butter, but you can't make guns. And if you go like right over here, you can make so much guns and so much butter. Okay.
I see.
So these are the charts that I make. You see, I use the same effort and preparation that CERN does.
Well, you get the same
out.
result. You get the same result.
Yeah.
Far
Yeah,
less.
yeah. You get the same result. Exactly.
And we could put a time versus results chart. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if we want to go into it, I definitely made a lot of charts. I don't remember if I had this already last week, but this is a new one. This is basically kind of the big question that after we've seen the Boston Dynamics, I have to ask you this question, Randy.
Yes.
Is it DOA? Is it dead on arrival?
Well, I'm not. So I saw this on X and I wonder exactly what you're talking about. But since I'm traveling and spending time with my family, I didn't have time to go into your full deal. So help me out here.
Well, basically, it kind of started out lying on the floor, which, it kind of looked at it, reminded me, it's like, oh, one of those crime scenes.
Yes.
And, is this a desperate attempt by them or not? Or are they, fully back in the game? I mean, I think a lot of people are reasonably impressed with what they were to come up with. I had a chance to get a guesstimate on the walking speed. And I think the walking speed might be close to 1.4 meters per second, which means they've already right out of the bat, they're walking faster than what we've seen Tesla do.
Right.
And they're already at the speed that you need to work in the factory. Yeah. The question is whether they have end-to-end all these other things. But, from the standpoint of the mechanics, it's right there. So, of course, the jury is out on who the winners and losers are going to be. And I feel there's going to be way more winners than losers.
Yeah.
The only way you lose is because you just can't get your technology working, or you just don't get enough interest. It's not because there's not a market for it. If you're able to produce it right, you're going to get it. But, I kind of went through last week and of course made a lot of these different pictures showing here. But the main thing is that the one thing I noticed about the Boston Dynamics waste is like this mechanism in here. It's like, aha, I'd seen that mechanism before, and I'd seen that mechanism in the figure bot.
Oh,
And I did what I do is I make a pun out of this. I said, they wasted no time in using this design just as a pun.
Yes.
And so that caught the attention of Brett Adcock, and he says that they definitely copied their design, which is like, yeah, okay, possibly they did, because it's right there. Someone could copy it.
Right.
And a lot of times if you expose something like that, people can copy your design, but he said it's patented.
Yeah.
And to me, it's going to be interesting to figure out where the patent comes from, because it's using components in here which are very standard in configurations that have been used before. As a matter of fact, this kind of thing topologically is the same as the wrist in Optimus and the ankles that are used in others. So it's not necessarily a unique mechanism, but you probably know more about patent law than I do. Isn't sometimes it come down to the unique application of something as opposed to the actual
Rarely.
Rarely. So
if you have prior art, if you can show that there's prior art that would make this new application obvious. That's how you decide. Prior art, obvious or not obvious. Obvious to someone who is an expert in the field. So a lot of times you can see something that you think is really, really special and really, really unique, but you start looking back at prior art and you go, no, that's kind of like, duh. You were using to hang up clothes before, and now you want to use the same hanger, to hang up towels. Well, that's not going to be a patent.
So it'll be interesting. And again, a lot of times when people say patent, a lot of times they may be talking about patent pending versus patent granted. So we just don't know.
It might not be mechanical. He might have a design patent. I don't know. Design patent.
Yeah, could be. Or part of the reason for this mechanism is that it gets a lot of the volume back in the torso for other things like stuffing batteries in there versus some of the other ways. And that's kind of why you brought it up. But I think that's a pretty good kind of summary on that. Now, the other thing that we can probably talk about, and that is the other news that was probably made after that in our summary. And that was, I think, over the weekend, Jensen Huang was speaking at some conference or something in which he talked about the cost of the humanoid bots.
Right.
And do you remember what he said?
Yeah, he said 20 grand.
Yeah, but there's no reason why they could be 10 to 20 grand. Now I got to ask you, who is this Jensen Huang guy? Is he like some celebrity CEO that they hired out of Harvard MBA?
I would say Jensen Huang is a founder, and that he's built this thing himself, and is another. I would say he's now a celebrity.
Yeah, he's a celebrity,
like
but
Musk is a celebrity.
He's not an MBA, right? He's an engineer.
Right.
Built a company from the ground up. They produce some very advanced technology, right? And chips are real easy. You and I could just produce it in our basement, right? No, no, it's like it's.
I can't even produce potato chips in my basement. What do you
exactly. So he knows a thing or two about manufacturing. You might say, he doesn't know anything about building cars or something like this. He knows a thing or two. So if I was to come up to him and make some sort of statement about, we can produce this for that amount, he would probably question the death out of me and then like run these calculations in his head and not just take that on good faith.
Right.
So he's basically kind of thrown out a number that is not shocking to us, but what's nice to know is
you and me.
Is to hear it from other people, because let's roll the tape back a little bit, because the first time that you had John and I on the show, which was maybe a little over a year ago, it was more or less to talk about Optimus. And I was looking at it as like an engineer, is it technically possible and everything else. And then you popped the question that I had not been prepared for, and it's like, how much is it going to cost to build these things? And I did what you normally do in that situation is I made sure John answered the question first. Okay. Because I hadn't really given it any thought. And then finally he gave his answer. I then did the next thing that you're supposed to do. And then as I deflected and I said, they're not going to sell them. They're going to lease them. And then I changed the whole topic and then to get all of them about that. And that's kind of where the whole idea of robot as a service came from, because it seemed obvious to me.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, I'm not sure if I was pressed to come up with a number at that point, but basically, you know, it's like we'd already heard Elon say that it should cost about the same as a car, which kind of made sense.
Or less.
Yeah, or less. And James Dama had already made, you know, similar type of argument. Right. And of course, you got to be careful of you know, using analogy all the time. Mm-hmm. Reasoning by analogy, because sometimes it might be missing, but usually it's pretty reasonable. It's like, look, it's more complex than a cell phone, but less complex than a car. Look at the materials that are going in there. It's just standard aluminum. It's just some material costs. We know it can't be less than $200. Okay, right. If you melt everything down, right? But come on, it can't be. So you're going on that, and the whole thing is like you're just, you know, am I missing some ingredient here? Is there something obvious we're not there? So after that discussion, that I went ahead and I finally put the spreadsheet together and did the bill of materials to get an idea. Yeah. And as I said, I'm always hard pressed to get north of 10,000. Yeah. And it just comes down to the assumption on the cost of the actuators. So if the actuators cost $100, you're under 10. If they cost $1,000, you're up around 40, something like that. Right. But I was always a bit concerned. And then as this went along, Brett Adcock from Figure also weighed in, because he's in the past said that, you know, he thought they could get it down around 50 or something like that. Wow. And I think he's being careful, because they know it's like, come on, there's like all these things that can just kind of go wrong. Let's kind of sandbag it a little bit, give higher numbers, because then if we do better, then we get good. But if it turns out we can't do it for less than 100 grand, we're going to be in trouble. So he's giving a number like that. But then he went and he gave like, you know, it should be easy because here's a simple bill of materials. And it was just like you'd expect, you know, PCBs, you get the chip in there, you get some structural stuff, you get some cameras, and you get batteries, and what's left? It's like, okay, good. I think I covered all those categories. Yes. So there's really not that much. So I think everyone is beginning to realize that these things can be built for pretty low costs. Yeah. And it's really nice to be able to see that. So I don't know if there's any more you want to add on that.
Yeah, they also said he also came out with $500 a month. I made some assumptions about his, I made a few assumptions about his entire statement. The number one assumption was that he was talking about $20,000 retail. In other words, and probably he's talking about when it goes in the home, because he's talking about in the home. So he's talking about 5 years from now. Yeah, he's got, and you know, people will call me optimistic, you know, but I think 5 years might be better. We might beat 5 years, but it could be 5 years before anybody wants to sell them in the home, because they'll be able to sell them to industry for so much more. Right. And then the $500 a month would be in the home. That would be right. To rent it rather than buy it. So in the meantime, I think they're going to, I'm sticking with my number. I don't think anybody's going to sell them, and I think they'll be $5,000 a month. So I think
to companies. Yes. To a company. So we're looking somewhere around there. We're in agreement. But I think when we kind of looked at the long-term TAM, and Cern has probably done the same thing, I think he sort of felt that, it might be somewhere on the order of 1,000 a month for it. So, I mean, it's like, we're quibbling about small numbers, right. You know, it's like just a factor or two, and it depends upon where you are in that tail. Yeah. And you're right, it could be happening quicker, because the CEO of 1X is going straight into the home right away. He thinks it's ready to do it, and he thinks he can do it for 10 grand as well. So, I mean, there are others out there that are looking at different ways, different materials, different approaches to actuators that could bring the cost down, make it safe enough. And it could happen a lot sooner. So it's definitely a space you want to look at.
So I think, Scott, I just think we should take a little victory lap here. You know, you know, you were way out ahead on this stuff, doing the bills and materials and stuff. Nobody else was doing them. And I think that, you know, I got it right with regard to some things like, oh, they're going to be in the factories this year. So that would be the earnings call, of course, but we're skipping ahead. But
because I think the next thing on the list after that is that over the weekend there was a video that was put out showing the agility bot falling down in the factory, but it wasn't a factory. It was on a trade show floor, and it was like well over a year ago. and it was like kind of a blooper, and even Agility kind of put it out, and they joked about stuff like that. But then it makes the rounds of the internet again, and it ended up getting like a reply from Elon, which is sort of a sad emoji. And I'm not sure if it's like Elon was like throwing shade at them, or it
Yeah.
was like, just kind of too bad that the robot fell down.
Right.
But the new CEO of Agility, she takes no prisoners. And so she reposted that and said, we'll bring Digit down to Optimus and to see who can do a walk around the park.
Right.
Well, basically around the block,
Right,
so they're ready to say, all right, because they know Elon is very competitive.
right.
Surprisingly, he has not replied, and of course, it was like the Sunday before earnings, okay, and he was supposed to be in India, and so he's distracted, not distracted enough to not post, tweet every now and then, but probably didn't necessarily see that. However, Gordy Rose of Sanctuary AI saw it, and he was like, yeah, absolutely, we should go ahead and do it. And they start talking about, the idea of having a robot Olympics, which meanwhile, at the same time, Cern, Herbert, and I are thinking, and John are thinking the exact same thing. And we're putting it out there. John had a spaces, talking about, what would be the kind of events, how you kind of do it. And it seems like that a couple of these vendors are really serious about the idea of some kind of meetup or something like that, where they start to have a little bit of friendly competition between them to show what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good idea. And
absolutely,
so
it would be
I am like,
everybody. It would be great for everybody.
Yeah, I'm pretty bullish that maybe by the end of the year, we will see something like that may end up becoming a yearly kind of event, and the events will get more complex over time. So I'm hopeful something like that's going to happen. We'll see if we can pull that off. And then moving on to the next big piece of news.
Yeah.
And that's like not even 24 hours old, right? And that is what?
We're gonna be seeing robots in factories at Tesla this year.
Yeah. Well, it's not, Elon kind of already said that back in January, and he's just reiterating again. But we get maybe slightly better idea that it's sort of what we expected, is that he says that they're doing factory operations in the lab.
Right.
So it may be that they haven't really taken it down to the factory floor. Right. They brought the floor to the bots the other way. And I just thought it would have made more sense. So I'm still surprised that they wouldn't have been down. And maybe they're making laboratory things on there. But the main thing is demonstrating the kinds of operations that you would do on the factory floor. And it could be that they just really don't want to disturb the line right now. That you should start to see it in production, meaning on the lines, not Optimus in production, but on the lines later this year. So I'll actually be used there. And I expect that means it's not that they are showing that it can do it, but at that point, they're running shifts, because what you're doing in the lab right now is trying to verify that it can run a shift.
Right.
And what does it mean to run a shift?
Well, okay. So I will, I don't know if we're talking about that it can run the shift. Did the battery will last that long, or that it can?
Yeah, it's one thing to show that it can do this task.
Yeah.
But can it do that task repeatedly and reliably? Your OEE that you want to have.
I tend to, so I call me crazy, Scott, but I really feel like all of these bots are going to eventually have a swap out battery. I think it's a stupid idea for cars. It might be an okay idea for trucks. I'm not sure. I haven't decided on that. On big trucks, semis. Might be an okay idea on airplanes or something. But for the car thing just doesn't work right. But for the bots,
it's a good idea on a power drill.
Power drill, yes, it works great on a power drill. In fact, I wish I had it on my cell phone. I wish I could carry around a swap out.
The trucks, I see it could, those packs could be something separate, because they're kind of part of the towing that you have. You made almost part of
exactly, yeah.
There's some of it, but
robot, it seems obvious to me that it would be a
okay. Now most of them have decided against it. They've all looked into it, which is surprising. And 1X, they looked at it, and they have a small battery pack that has about an hour life, because they found that from their surveys that they've done, the customers only want fast charging. So if you can charge it back up in 5 minutes, that's good enough. So an hour use, something like that. Agility is running, I think, can probably run a couple hours before they have to charge, and they do a quick charge. And again, I've argued that the robot is the battery pack. Aptronic does have swappable. I think they might be one of the few that have it.
Okay.
Agility has what they call a serviceable battery pack. In other words, it's not that hard to replace it and put another one in if you want to.
Okay.
But they kind of looked at it and felt that the extra engineering and the reliability and everything just wasn't worth it.
Wow.
And I had Cern and I had a discussion about that, in which he ran some numbers and he felt that swappable makes more sense economically, because if you're using the robot as like a swappable item while it's recharging, it's not doing useful work, right? And you look at it from like lost capital utilization. And I thought, well, wait a minute, but the infrastructure and the cost of being a couple of the swappable stuff must at least be equivalent to that. And he's like, well, yeah, there's a lot of assumptions that you're putting in there. So depending on how you're doing it, you can come to. Now, my feeling is that you don't need to, because everyone thinks the robot has to work 8 hours straight. It doesn't have to work 8 hours straight, because humans don't work 8 hours straight.
Right.
Humans take breaks.
Right.
And if you were taking breaks every couple hours on the same schedule that's already set up by the humans for these bots, there's more than enough time to charge them back up that they can make it to the end of the shift and still have well over an hour in reserve. And then between the normal shifts, because your changeover, you've also got like another 20, 30 minutes, you can get yourself right back up to that level that you need. And you don't need a fast charging. You don't need supercharging, because remember, these batteries are about 1/30 the size of your Model Y.
Right.
So you cannot charge it, with the same number of throughput, and you don't need to. Right. So you can, in just like 5-10 minutes of charge, you can get a lot to get you back up to where you need to be. And then within 20 to 30 minutes, you can get almost up to like the 80%, down from like the 20%, something like that. And you can do it with the standard 220 that you've got in every factory. So it's not like you got to rewire the place. It's like,
right.
It can be done. So, so the main thing is like, okay, it's one thing that we can bring the Optimus out there and it shows off to the press for like 10 minutes doing some operation, and the press leaves, and then like it falls apart and like the arm drops off because it's just not reliable. Doesn't have to, So what they're doing in the lab is they're going to be sitting there and then verifying that they can actually make this thing reliably, and it's not going to do something stupid or just fall on the floor or whatever, and that they need to make sure the rates are right. So once they're there, then they're going to put it in there, and I think that's pretty much what they're saying, is that it's going to start actually doing useful work.
Right.
And like, again, useful work is more than 5 minutes. It has to be able to make it through the whole shift, and it has to then show up for the next shift that it's slated for, which is either immediately after it or the next morning.
Yes.
So if you're on the Model S and X lines, I think that's the next morning, because I think they are only running one shift a day. They're not running them through. That's my understanding. Could be wrong on that, but
yeah. But I mean, ultimately, we're gonna, for them to really be valuable, you're gonna want them to run 24/7.
Yeah. But there's stepping stones to get there. And the thing is that, if you've got a line that right now is only running one shift a day,
right.
And it can go in there and it can do the work, and it can do the work at less than the cost that it costs you right now, and with the reliability. And of course, you're going to have robot minders that have to go in and verify that it's working. And of course, you don't want a one-to-one relationship, because at that point, it's like, well, wait a minute, we're paying twice for what's going on there.
Right.
You need to make sure that, I think it's like maybe at least 5-to-1 or 10-to-1, something like that.
I think will.
Yeah, for your technicians. But it's, starting out of the gate, it's probably not going to be quite that way. It's going to be closer to 1-to-1, because they need to look at like a hawk, but they'll back off and back off and back off. And then you'll be able to see that, oh, we're not losing money putting Optimus on the production line.
Well, I know that I find with my printer that I do have to supervise my printer when it's
all the time.
I have to supervise the printer, because if I walk away for even an instant, it'll work fine for an hour. But if I turn my for even an instant, it'll completely screw up. So that's the automation that I have in my office right now.
Yeah,
and it's already, and you think they could do better.
Yeah, you're right. It's so eventually they'll have to have an Optimus that is able to supervise the other Optimus.
Right, there you go. That's right.
Then problem solved there. But maybe that's what we need, a printer that supervises the other printers. But no, I have that same knack. That I can bring printers down and fax machine, anything that's got paper in it, any paper jamming devices, scanners, just on and on and on. To the point that I even brought down the print shop at the U.S. Post Office once, repeatedly.
Repeatedly.
Yes, because I was making the the newsletter for our homeowners association.
Okay.
And rather than printing it out and having to go to Kinko's for it, I discovered, oh, they have this on-demand print service from the Postal Service.
Oh,
And there's nothing fancy. I mean, it's using standard fonts, not like weird graphics or anything like that.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
thing that was beautiful about it is not only they print it, but they fold it, they merge it with your address list, and they put the stamp on it. And of course,
Yeah.
it's less than normal. So it's like, wow,
Yeah.
great. You don't have to do any of that work. So it's just like online, just, send the copy. And I kept crashing the print shop. And they were trying to figure out what was going on. It's like, it's a standard Word document, I have no idea what's going on. And I guess eventually they found something, but I think it ended up being some Microsoft bug that was going on. And but again, it wasn't like a deluxe font, because I always use like, Times Roman and Courier. It's like, come on. I wasn't using Comic Sans or anything like that, but yeah. So again, that's just me and my finger.
So then we have the other news from Tesla, which was that they will ship.
Yeah.
They will ship to third parties. Total clarity. Nobody can confuse this anymore. They will ship to third parties, expected to by the end of 2025. And of course, the only thing they left out of that was, I think you may have been the first to say it. I'll give you credit. And that's really hard for me to do. That you will open the box, the bot will just, maybe you'll have to push a button, maybe not. And the bot will say, hi, I'm the bot. He puts his arms on, and,
his arms are already there.
His arms are already on.
His arms are already there.
He gets out of the box and asks the new master, exactly what would you like me to do?
Walks you absolutely through everything. I mean, it's Elon really hates complexity on a consumer product. So he's always talked about, like with Starlink, there's only things you have to do: plug it in and point in the sky, and in any order that you want.
Right.
So that's the minimum that you'd probably have, is that when it comes in there, you just have to like push some button to start it.
Right.
And then, of course, any other things that the lawyers say you've got to put in there, it's like, you've got to make sure that, for safety reasons, this and that. But otherwise, Optimus will come up there and, tell you what the ground rules are and keep them away from water, and, a few things like that. And how you want to do the impress, of the, of him with your voice, so he is the instruction manual.
Right.
And that's why I joked in the past that, the technical writer's like, what? There's a technical writer. You don't need one, Yeah. So it'll be that easy. And that's, we were kind of aggressive with our timeframes. I think maybe 12 to 18 months or something like that. But it looks like they're all talking about easily 100 bots this year. They're all talking about 10xing next year. So there'll easily be 1,000 in 2025 from the different bot companies. And then they all see that from there ramping on up.
Right.
Now, if you're selling to external companies, why would you sell to external companies if you're building the bot for yourself?
Why would you sell to external companies if you're building it for yourself?
Yeah, for your own internal use.
Well, because you're making more than enough to sell to use for yourself.
You satisfied your own internal demand. Yes. So it was like, oh, okay. So, they're going to start doing that when they've decided they sort of satisfied their own internal demand.
Yes.
But they have a production volume, which they want to take advantage of to keep their costs down. So they're ready to start selling them out. And again, my assumption is they're selling them to their own sub-suppliers at first.
Right.
But maybe it could be wrong. Could be that they're like, anyone wants to buy it, they can go ahead and buy it.
Right. Yeah. I have this theory that in the beginning they will take applications, and because they'll be wanting to use it in use cases where it's going to be the most, like the Pepsi Cola truck thing with the semi would be the perfect example. Okay, we want to sell Pepsi, 100 of these so that they can put them in circumstances and see how they do, in and out, etc. We've talked about some of these, but I think and that might be something that even happens before this rollout at the end of next year. They would start selling them, or
I wouldn't be surprised if Pepsi wouldn't be one of those targets. So, and part of it's like, all right, one of them is going to be like our tier suppliers, because we want to reduce our costs. So let's help our tier suppliers there. The other is like, well, Pepsi likes what we're going on, and I'm sure there are applications that could be used at Pepsi. So why not? Might be the same thing. The other thing to look at is that if the bots are going into the Tesla tier suppliers, that means not only are they helping drive the cost of Tesla automobiles down, but also the Tesla competitors potentially, because they're they're making the same kind of components for that.
Yes.
And that's not something that bothers Elon.
No.
He's like, he doesn't want to put these companies out of business. He wants to make them also more competitive in a way.
Well,
And we heard about that with FSD, right?
well, no, he proved it totally
Yeah,
yesterday. He
yeah.
said, look, we're not even running the 4680 as fast as we could because our battery manufacturers that we are hurting right now, and we need to take their supply.
Yeah.
That was like, oh my
Need to
gosh,
take their supply. Yeah.
if you want to prove what kind of a customer you are, you just did. You just
Yeah.
said all those suppliers, we rely on you, we respect you, and we're gonna even take your supply before we mass produce our own supply. Holy cow, that was a shocker.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also FSD, they're talking about having other automotive OEMs using FSD.
Right.
So again, it's
Right.
helping them to survive because a
Sure.
lot of people said, well, wait a minute, at some point, if your car doesn't have this capability, then no one's going to want to buy your car.
Right.
It's going to be really hard. So it's like the survival thing. And so you have to start looking at it. So if they're already looking at licensing that, I could see they would sell Optimus to the competitors,
Yeah.
automotive OEMs, if that's what they
Absolutely.
need.
I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah. I think so. And they have a jocular relationship, between him and Farley and stuff like that.
Right.
But I think at the end of the day, they get along fine. Elon doesn't want to see Ford go bankrupt. He keeps on saying that it's like one of the two that hasn't, and it's not like he wants Tesla to be the only one. I think in a sense, he wants to make sure that they don't. So I would not be surprised to see that being used possibly there. That could
absolutely.
be a possible one.
Absolutely.
And whether that's next year, I don't know. Maybe it's the year after. Maybe
Right.
it kind of trickles on over. But
Sure.
a lot of it will come down to is that if FSD goes to Ford, that's an indicator that there's going to be more cooperation and that they'll get the Tesla. Because think about it, remember, Ford was the first one to get on the NACS bandwagon.
I take a look at that, and I also think that the company that's going to get it, the one that's talking to him already, is BYD. And so I'm putting that out there. I'm gonna remind people
Okay.
that I was right.
Okay, so BYD doesn't have any
They're not even
FSD developed.
theoretically, they're not even working on it, so that's why I think it's gonna be BYD.
Oh, okay. And they buy batteries, so they have a relationship.
Yeah,
They have a relationship. Yeah. Yeah. That's not a bad guess. It's not the one I would have gone with, but yeah, it's.
Well, they also have a bunch of cars. I mean, they got they're making a lot of cars.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then they'll be in trouble because their Chinese competitors are working on it, whether they're able to come up with a solution or not. But sometimes a partial solution is better than none.
Solution.
And yeah.
All right. Well, we have a hard cutoff, so I'm just going to say that, as always, Scott, it's a thrill a minute, and I don't know what in the world that Cern is going to do after today, because I
know those charts.
You've really thrown down the gauntlet with those charts. So
yeah,
going to have to come up with something amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks again, and to all of you out there. It's been great talking to you.